All right, another example of going through and finding elevations and height of the instrument. Again, remembering that just because there's a blank there doesn't mean you need to fill it in. So, and just always, again, checking for side shots, making sure that not using that if it happens to be there, that's a different situation than just kind of straight up and down. But we don't have any side shots here. So I'm going to do this one the way I did the last example, which is kind of start with the end in mind and sum up my back sights and foresights and find that elevation and then go through, find my height of the instruments and elevations at each point and make sure I get there in the end. So I can find this final answer, and sometimes that's all you need, by summing my back sights. So I just add that whole column together, 8.124 plus 6.348 plus 7.126 plus 4.448 plus 3.964, and I get 30.010. And then sum my foresights, 1.212 plus 7.386 plus 5.626 plus 5.024 plus 4.742, and I get 23.990 feet for that. And so to find the difference between those two, I sum my back sights and I subtract the sum of the foresights. So that becomes 30.010 minus this 23.990, and that is a 6.02 feet. And this is positive because the foresights are less than the back sights. So that means that I need to take my starting elevation and add that distance to it. So in this case, my starting elevation is the 932.862, and I'm going to add the 6.02 to that, put a zero there as a placeholder, and I get 938.882. And so now I know my final elevation for benchmark 2, and I'm going to use my vertical calculation approach here on this piece of paper, going up for every back sight and down for every foresight to see if I can get to that elevation at the end. So I'm going to start here at benchmark 1 with a given elevation of 932.862. And I'll add my first back sight to that. So I'm going to add the 8.124, and that gets me to 940.986. And again, making sure I'm writing this in the correct box. So I started here with this elevation. I added this back sight. This is the height of the instrument. So that goes in this blank here, 940.986. Remember, there's not going to be any other numbers that go in the back sight or foresight columns. The height of the instruments are going to come right after the back sights, and the elevations are going to come right after the foresights. So let's do that now. So that is my height of the instrument at A. Now to find my elevation, I'm going to go down by this foresight. So I'm going to subtract the 1.212, and that becomes 939.774, and that's my TP1 elevation. So I'll put it right next to there, 939.774. And I'll just continue this process, add the height, add the back sight here to find that height of the instrument. So add the 6.348, and that will get me to 946.122 for the height of the instrument at B. And now subtract the foresight, minus 7.386. And that will get me to 938.736 for the turning point 2 elevation. And again, I'll put that next to it here, 938.736. And now back to adding that back site again. Next back site here is the 7.126. And that will get me up to 945.862 for the height of the instrument at C. And now subtracting that next back site, next four sites, sorry, minus 5.626. And that becomes 940.236. And that is my turning point 3 elevation. Again, goes right next to that 4 site. And we'll just keep on continuing here. We'll add that next back site following the procedure. This gets to be quite the long list here, so I'll just kind of keep sliding up here so we can see at least the calculations. So that becomes 944.684 for that height of the instrument at D. And I'll put that in my table too. 944.684. And now subtract that foresight minus 5.024. And that becomes 939.660 for that turning point 4 elevation. I'll put it up here as well. 939.660. I'm getting close to the end here. So let's add on that last back site plus 3.964. Whoop. And I get 943.624. And that will be my height of the instrument at E, my last height of the instrument point. 943.624. And then subtract my last foresight, and hopefully I get that same final elevation. So let's try that out. Minus 4.742. And yes, that does give me 938.882 for my final benchmark 2 elevation. So now I have a nice long list of all of my uh, back sites, four sites as I calculate them through. And then I've also put them in my table as well. And I can do that check either at the beginning, like I did, or at the end to make sure that I've summarily done the right procedure as I go through.